Salvation, and in this series of videos I want to show you some of my character builds in Path of Exile. Today we'll have a look at my cast on crit Ground Slam Templar. As you have seen in the beginning of this video, this build looks quite spectacular when it's in action. So let's have a look at the gear I'm using to achieve this effect. The most important part of our gear is our scepter that we are wielding in our main hand. It has a hits cannot be evaded mod that is exclusive to scepters sold by Vegan and cannot roll on normal rare weapons. Because of this we basically have to multi-mod our weapon, because it's very hard to just roll a decent weapon and you would have to waste many exalted on that. So we are settling for a multi-mod that we add with Elreon. If you're just starting out with this build, it's perfectly fine if you just have a scepter with hits cannot be evaded, some attack speed, spell damage or critical strike chance, and then you can just mastercraft one of the missing mods on it. That will be totally okay for leveling, and basically the multi-modded scepter is a luxury. So this scepter is used for our Ground Slam. As you can see, I have a dagger in my offhand, but Ground Slam only works with staffs or maces. So this dagger will not be used for the Ground Slam, and that's a good thing, because if we would alternate weapons we would not get the benefit from hits cannot be evaded all the time. So we only want one mace with this mod to be used in our attack. Why do I have this dagger in my offhand then, if I don't use it to attack? There are several reasons for that. First, a dagger can roll spell damage, which will increase the damage of our spells. Also, a dagger has increased global critical strike chance as an implicit mod, and while our scepter doesn't have a bad critical strike chance, it's still not really good. So to make this work for cast on crit, we need all the critical strike chance we can get. So that's one of the main reasons for wielding the dagger in your offhand, to get buffs for your spells and the global critical strike chance. You can pretty much use the rest of the dagger as a stat stick for maybe a resist, or I have mana regeneration on it, and of course cold damage leeches life is mastercraft. So yeah, it does not really have to have great rolls. The most important part is just 80% global critical strike chance. There's also another good reason for using a dagger. It enables us to use whirling blades, and that's a great movement skill. Once you start using it and get used to its little quirks, you really get addicted to it, and I would not want to miss it. As we have a scepter in our main hand, we can also use Leap Slam, so we can use that to jump up ledges, while we use whirling blades to move on open ground. And both can be linked with faster attacks to make the movement faster. So what else do we have here? We are using a rat's nest. That's of course because of the attack speed and global critical strike chance. It's basically great helmet for every custom crit build. And then we have the Maligaro's Virtuosities. Of course also pretty much really good gloves for custom crit builds. Then we're using diamond rings just with life and some resists on it. Nothing special. Fire damage on it is nice. I guess we'll talk about that later when we have a look at the skill tree. On your amulet you want mainly critical strike chance. I'm also using it for resists because I'm missing some on my rings. If you don't need the resists, you can also look for critical strike multiplier, of course. And spell damage would be good also. Yeah. Then our boots are pretty standard. We're using life and resists. In this case I don't have movement speeds on my boots, and I don't need it because I'm moving around with whirling blades all the time, and whirling blades does not care about the movement speed you have on your boots. So yeah, if you don't use whirling blades, don't like it to move around all the time with whirling blades, I would suggest to get movement speed on your boots. Our belt is just life resists, and in this case I've opted to get a belt with flask effect duration. It's pretty nice to have longer uptime on your Saphir flask. You will need that to do something about reflect. So it's a pretty good mod on the belt in my opinion. As body armor we are using a Carcass Jack. This is basically a DPS armor because the radius of area skills and the increased area damage, and in our case it helps all of our skills and spells because we are using ground slam and get a bigger AoE for the ground slam, so we can hit more enemies with each slam, and also can keep greater distance to our enemies, which makes it safer to engage some enemies. And we're using 2 area of effect spells, so those profit too from the radius and area damage. I really like the over-the-top AoE of this build, so I'm using increased area of effect. You could also switch that for a third spell, or you could put in life leech if you get a third red socket, and yeah, there's quite a lot of options for the 6th link. Power charge and crit is also an option, but yeah, I really like the over-the-top area of effect, and so I use increased area of effect most of the time. For flasks I'm using pretty standard instant flask, and then freeze immune flask. You can run into some mana problems if you're engaging single targets, so I prefer to have a Surgeon's hybrid flask. So with this flask basically all your mana problems are solved, because you recharge someone crit and you crit a lot, and it gives you more than enough mana back. Then I'm also experimenting with a diamond flask at the moment. I still don't know if it's really worth it, but it also helps with single targets, because not only you can trigger your spells more often, and your spells will also crit more often, and I feel like it helps with single target, but you could of course skip that and use another resist flask. And the most important flask maybe is a Surgeon's Safe Air flask, and I choose to roll it for of adrenaline, because you want to have this one up basically all the time, and so it's just convenient to get some additional movement speed on it for times when you can't use Whirling Blades because there's too much crap on the ground. So let's have a look at the skill tree. As you can see at the first glance, I'm traveling quite a lot in the tree, and you can start as Templar, but you can do it almost the same as Witch or Shadow. I guess it would be even a bit more effective to do it as Witch or Shadow, just because you get more damage from your starting nodes. As Templar you get 14%, 12, 10, 10, 10, and here you get 16, 12 and 10, 10, 10. Basically it's completely the same for these three classes. The important keystones, or better said notables, we want to get is over here, the disemboweling, because we have lots of melee critical strike chance here. Then we want to get all the power charges from the tree, and as you can see they are pretty conveniently placed for our passing, so we don't have to get out of our way to get them. Important are also the area of effect notables in the Witch area and in the Templar area, because this will boost the area of effect of our ground slam, and also the area of effect and area damage of the skills, of the spells we are casting. So Templar area has also has this really nice notable, because we get spell damage and attack speed, which both is pretty useful for us, and we get some more attack speed over here at the Shadow, and of course some attack speed from Rat's Nest. For our defense we traveled over here to get acrobatics and phase acrobatics, and we also took pretty much every single life node we could get, and we get a decent amount of life with it. It's nothing to really brag about, but it's a decent amount. You're not all that squishy. Another thing to notice over here, Celestial Judgment and especially Celestial Punishment get 25% increased damage against frozen, shocked or ignited enemies, and as I told you before, on my ring I have some fire damage, and with each critical strike we will ignite the enemies, so all our spells will do this more damage, this increased damage all the time. Another thing that's a bit special about this build is that we get Wisps of Doom to dual curse our enemies. We're using Elemental Weakness and Assassin's Mark. If you want to play it a bit safer, you could also curse with Warlord's Mark just to get some leech from it, and gain endurance charges that you will have basically up all the time. I guess especially with the next patch and the changes to cast 1 damage taken enduring cry, this may be a really good option, because that way you still can use cast 1 damage taken and immortal call and have another way to keep your endurance charges up. But at the moment I'm using elemental weakness. The Assassin's Mark is of course used for additional critical strike chance, the extra damage with critical strikes, and it also will be our main source of power charge generation. We also get some spell critical strike chance to deal more damage with our spells, and most critical strike chance we get is global, so our spells have a pretty high critical strike chance and really can profit a lot from the critical strike multiplier we are getting here. Yeah, that was basically everything for the build from the tree. All the life you can get, all the crit you can get, and all the area of effect you can get. To conclude the video, I will show you some combinations of different spells you could use with this build. Starting off with Glacial Cascade and Flame Surge. So I have 2 spells on the increased area of effect gem, and I feel like it's a really strong combination that has better single target than Ice Nova and Glacial Cascade, and the only downside is that you are more prone to reflect because your Sapphire Flask won't save you from all the elemental damage you're dealing. Next thing is a bit ridiculous with Firestorm, Ice Nova and Storm Calls, and you can see it's really a mess on the screen, but it's sometimes fun to do messy stuff. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a really fun build to play. If you have any questions about this build, feel free to use the YouTube comment section. I will try to answer them as soon as possible.